Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today, we continue our study of the book of Joshua, Sefer Yehoshua, chapter 22. As we are approaching the end of the book, we're reading how Yehoshua is kind of winding things up, wrapping things up before he completes his mission on this world. And he took care of making sure the cities of refuge were done. These are all the things that God had said needed to be done when the people entered the land. He made sure all of the tribes had their portions. He made sure the people of Levi, tribe of Levi, had their cities. Everything was all set up, but there's still some more business to take care of. And that is the 2.5 tribes who were to stay in the, who had received their portions on the other side of the Jordan River, on the east bank, Reuben, Gad, and half of Menasseh. If you recall, several chapters ago, they had agreed to fulfill when they first entered, right before they started the attack on Jericho, before they crossed the Jordan together with their brothers, as they had promised to Moshe in the Torah. They promised that they would do this, that they would take their portions on this side, but they would fight on the side of their brothers until they received their portions, so that they would participate in the battle for the land, and then they could go back to their families that they had left on their property on the east side of the Jordan. So now that things are winding up, it's time to wrap up that issue. So, Az Yikra Yehoshua, this is chapter 22, verse 1. Joshua called La Reuveni, to the Reubenites, the Gadi and the Gadites, V'lachatzi Shevet HaManasseh, and half of the tribe of Manasseh. Vayomer Aleim, and he said to them, Atem Shimartem, you have observed, or you have kept, Et Kol Hasher Tziva Etchem, Moshe Eved Adonai, everything that Moshe, the servant of God, commanded you to do, Vatishma'u b'koli, and you also listened to me when I requested, L'chol asher tziviti eschem, everything that I commanded you. Lo azavtem et achechem, you did not forsake your brothers, Ze yomim rabim, for all of these days, Ad hayom hazeh, until this day, Ushmartem et mishmeret mitzvat Adonai Elohechem, and you have kept and faithfully kept the commands of the Lord your God. That's the bottom line. But Moshe said what I said, but ultimately it's what God said and what he wanted. And now, God has completed and given rest to your brothers as he promised. Remember, rest means peace. It doesn't mean that the entire land was in their possession. But it means there's peace. They are now secure in their land, and now you can turn back and go to your abodes, your homes, el eretz achuzaschem, to the land which is your inheritance, asher nasan lachem Moshe Eved Adonai be'ever Yarden, which Moshe, the servant of God, set aside for you on the other side of the Jordan. Rak, however, shimru ma'od, I want you to be very careful. And Joshua was you can sense that he was a little afraid here, because they're going to be distant from the center of religion, which is now in Shiloh, the center where the service and worship of God is going to be at its strongest. You guys are going to go wander out there. Maybe you'll be subject to other influences and start floating off on your own ways. So Shimru Ma'od, be extremely careful. La'asot et ha-mitzvah, to do the commandments, v'et Torah, and the Torah, the teachings, asher tziva etchem Moshe Adonai, that Moshe, the servant of God, had taught to you, the ahava, which is what? To love et Adonai Elohechem, to love the Lord your God, v'lolechet b'chol derachav, and to go in his ways, v'lishmor mitzvosav, and to observe his commandments, v'ledavka bo, and to cleave yourself, to attach yourselves to God, v'lavdo, and to worship him, b'chol levavchem, with your entire hearts, v'chol nafshechem, and with your entire soul. These words obviously reminiscent of the famous words from the Torah that are found in the Shema, to serve God b'chol levavchem v'chol nafshchem. Vayivarchem Yehoshua, Joshua blessed them as one would when one parts ways. Vayishalchem, and he sent them off on their way. Vayelchu el ohaleim, and they set out on their path towards their homes. Valachatzi shevet haManasseh nosan Moshe ba'Bashan, to the half of the tribe of Menasseh, that Moshe had given them a portion in the land of Bashan, Ulachetzio, and to another half, Nasan Yoshua im Acheim, Yoshua gave, the other half Joshua gave to them together with their brothers Be'ever Yarden Yama on the western side of the Jordan. V'gam ki shilcham Yoshua el Ohalehem Va'yavarchem. And Joshua sent them, that half a tribe that was on the other side of the Jordan, he sent them also on their way and blessed them. So Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh. Vayomer aleim leimar, and he said to them as follows: B'nechasim rabim, with many properties, with a lot of wealth. Shuvu el alechem, return to your tents. Uv'miknerav ma'od, with a huge amount of livestock. B'chesef u'v'zav, with gold and silver. V'nechoshet u'v'barzel, and bronze and iron. Uv'slamot harbe ma'od, and many clothings, articles of clothing. Chilku shlal oivechem emachechem, share what you have what you have obtained here with your brothers. And Rashi explains the brothers, meaning they left their families back on the other side, but with the families they had to also leave some soldiers, men, officers to protect the people that were there. So don't think that because you went to war you get to keep it all, but no, they are also important, what they were doing there, and you need to share it with them. That's how Rashi explains this verse. Vayashuvu vayelchu b'nei Reuven b'nei Gad b'chat shevet haManasseh. So they returned and they went. These tribes, these 2.5 tribes, made b'nei Israel from the people of Israel. Mishilo, they left the place of Shiloh, the area where the central, they were congregated in Shiloh, where the tabernacle was, Asher b'Eretz Canaan, which is in the land of Canaan. Lolechet el Eretz Hagilah, to go to the land of Gilad, which is on the other side of the Jordan, El Eretz Achuzasam, to the place which was their inheritance, Asher Nochzuba, which they had possessed, Al Pi Adonai Biad Moshe, based on God's command that He gave through Moshe. Vayovo'u al Galilos HaYarden, and they came to the region of the Jordan, these areas surrounding the Jordan River, Asher b'Eretz Canaan. Vayivnu v'nei Reuven v'nei Gad b'chat shevet haManasseh sham mizbeach al Yarden, and they built an altar on the banks of the Jordan River, Mizbeach Gadol L'Mareh, a great altar that one could see from far away, a very visible, large altar. Now, this, building an altar now is after the people had set the altar of God down in Shiloh, and the tabernacle was in Shiloh. This is not exactly appropriate. There should the place of worship, the central place of worship, the place where sacrifices are supposed to be brought, are in Shiloh. This is a transgression of some of the basic rules given in the Torah, that when once there is a set place for the tabernacle, bamot, other altars are not okay. Vayishmu b'nei Yisrael leimar. So the people of Bnei Israel, the other tribes who remained in their land on the west side of the Jordan, heard it being said as follows: Hine banu b'nei Reuven b'nei Gad v'chat shevet haManasseh et hamizbeach al mul Eretz Canaan. The children of God, Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh have built an altar opposite the land of Canaan, El Galilos HaYarden, in the region of the Jordan, El Aver b'nei Yisrael, across from, on the other side, across from where the people of Israel are. In other words, you're already sensing that there's the people here on this side and people there. There's two groups. Now, it's unclear if they were obviously very concerned. It's not 100% clear if they were concerned because that they were building an altar to God in some other place than Shiloh. That's probably what their concern was. In other words, they're trying to make a new center of worship, which is going to lead to a split in the people. But the center of worship is here, even for the people on the other side. So they were very upset. It doesn't seem like they were necessarily afraid that they were building an altar to another god, at least at this point. Vayishma'u b'nei Yisrael, and the people of Israel heard this, Vayikalu kol hadas b'nei Yisrael Shiloh, and they gathered in Shiloh la'alos aleim latzava, to go to war with them. It's pretty astounding that they have just been fighting arm in arm together with them, and now they're about to go wage war against them because of this religious serious religious infraction, which seems to indicate to them that, hey, we are one community. The point is we're one community, and a civil war is now about to ensue. Because they are already setting up their own place. And they sent as a messenger at Pinhas ben Elazar HaKohen, the son of the high priest Pinhas. They sent him as a messenger to the land of Gilead across the Jordan. Basar Nasiim Imo, and there was 10 princes, 10 chiefs of Nasiach Lebeit Av, one for each family, for each tribe of Israel. V'ish Rosh Beis Avotam Hemal Alfi Yisrael. And each one of them was the heads of the many alfei. Here's alfei language. It doesn't mean thousands, but it means to the alfei, meaning aluf, which is well, I see it translated in some places as a contingent. It can also be like a regiment or a battalion, like a large group. And they came to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half of Menasseh, so these messengers led by Pinhas and the messengers representing the other tribes came to them and gave the following, brought the following message, the following talk. So says all of the congregation of God. And this is very interesting. They are referring to themselves as the congregation of God, with God's name spelled clearly here with the Yud, K, Vav, K, with God's name. In other words, we are the entire congregation of God speaking as one voice. There's one congregation, one God. What is this rebellion that you are rebelling against the God of Israel? Lashuv hayom, to turn now me'acharei Adonai, away from God. Bivnoschem lachem mizbeach, that you're building for yourselves an altar. Limrodchem hayom ba'Adonai, that now you're going to start and already rebel against God. Hama'at lanu et havon pa'ar. Don't you remember the sin of pa'ar? If you recall back in the book of Numbers, that the sin after of pa'ar, where the people were enticed by the daughters of the Midianites and ended up serving their avodah zarah, their idol worship, pa'ar, which resulted in a plague of deaths of many, until Pinhas himself, who's the one speaking, was the one who ended that plague by killing one of the transgressors. So here Pinhas is saying, don't you remember what happened then? Asher lohi taharnu mimenu adayom hazeh. We're still suffering. We still have not completely purified ourselves of that sin. Vahi hanegev badas Adonai, and then there was that plague in God's community. V'atem tashuvu hayom me'acharei Adonai. You must return from turning your backs on God. Return. Those of you that turned away from God must return back to God. Right? I'm sorry, I'm kind of reading this incorrectly. Atem tashuvu hayom is Pinchas still talking and saying, and now you are going back and turning away from God. It's not a command like I read it at first. You should, but it's rather he's stating, and now you're turning your backs again away. Atem timrudu hayom ba'Adonai, and now you are going to rebel against God. Umachar el kol adas Yisrael yiktzov, and then God is going to be mad at everyone. Don't you know that when one part of the people sin, everyone suffers for it? And if the reason is because your land is unclean, it is tameh, in other words, because you're on the other side of the Jordan, and if rulachem el eretz achuzat Adonai asher shachan shom mishkan Adonai, then come back to the place where God rested his Mishkan, where God rested his tabernacle in his holy place. In other words, if you're going to tell us that the reason why you're building this thing and decentralizing our religion and starting to create rifts is because you know what, you're far away and you're in a place it's not, then come back, join us. In order for us to stay together, we have to be together, so then let's be together. So Vadonai al timrodu, do not rebel against God. V'otanu al timrodu, and do not rebel against us. Bivnoschem lachem mizbeach, when you build for yourselves an altar, mibaladei mizbach Adonai Eloheinu, one that is separate from the altar of God. In other words, again, Pinhas is making it clear he's not accusing them of worshiping idols necessarily here. He's saying that you're rebelling against us, you're rebelling against the unity of the people by building yourself an alternate place, that once there's two places, everything falls apart. The importance and the idea of having a central location as a unifier, uniting the people in the purpose of serving God together is a crucial, important idea, which, as we know, when later on in history there was a split between the 10 tribes and Judah, one of the first things that the 10 tribes did was build their own center of worship. And this was, and that kind of cemented the split. And Pinhas is right now trying to prevent that from happening at this point in history. Halo Achan ben Zerach, remember when Achan, he was the one who was Mo'al Bacherem, he took and he violated the prohibition against taking property from the spoils of Jericho, of Yericho. Remember, the soldiers were lost in battle and people died, and God was angry at all of us because of one person's sin. And he was just one man. Lo gava bono, right? And he was not. It wasn't just him that died because of his sin. So don't think that just he's preempting their response, which could have been, well, it's our business, okay, so we're doing something wrong, it's our problem, not your problem. Why are you worried? Because the point is that we're one community, and we will all suffer for the sins of what you're doing. So then their answer, and they answered, the people of Reuben and Gad and half of Menasseh answered, Vayadabru, and they spoke El Rashi Alfei Yisrael, to the heads of the people of Israel, to the heads of the battalions or contingents of Israel. El Elohim Adonai, El Elohim Adonai, Hu Yodea, V'Yisrael Hu Yeda. The Lord God is God, or God is the Lord God. God is the Lord God. He knows, and his people Israel will know too. If we were doing this as a rebellious act, or as in some way of trying to I'm trying to think of another word for rebel against God. Al toshienu, if that's the case, then do not save us, do not back us up on this day. Livnos lanu mizbeach lashuv me'acharei Adonai. If we built this altar because we were trying to rebel against God, v'im lahalos alav ola umincha, v'im la'asos alav zivchei shlamim, Adonai hu yivakesh. That if our purpose was to turn away from God and to actually start bringing sacrifices as if this was the center of worship, then God Himself can demand from us punishment, so to speak. Ve'im lo mid'aga midavar. No, we did this because we were concerned that asinu etzos lemar. We created this altar here for the following reasons, in order to say the following message: Machar yomru b'neichem levanenu lemar. Your children will one day say to our children, Ma lachem v'ladonai Elohei Yisrael. What relationship do you have with God? You guys live over there. You're in a different place. In other words, we felt that one day we're going to be separated. We're going to be different. We're going to be over there. We're going to develop our own cultures, customs. We're going to live in one place. You're going to live in the other place. And what the children of our descendants and your descendants will have discussions with each other, and your descendants will say, who are you? You have no portion in God. God even put a boundary between us. The Jordan River, you guys have no place with God. And your children will one day say to our children that you can't come and worship God. So we said, we're going to build this altar, not because we were going to use it to worship. That wasn't our intention. Our intention wasn't to use this to bring sacrifices. Ki edu, it is just to bear witness to this. Beinenu v'nechem, between us and you, uvein doroseinu acharenu, and our descendants and the generations that will succeed us. La'avodas avodas Adonai lefanav, that we are also part, and we are here to serve and worship God in front of Him, meaning in His place. We can come to Shiloh and we can participate just like everyone else, with our sacrifices, with our offerings. And your children should not say one day to our children, that you have no place in God. And we thought to ourselves, or we figured, that when they tell this later on, when they say this, look at this altar, which was built in the form of the altar of God. It was built in that form so that everyone could see, and it was built specifically not to worship at, not to bring an olah, not to bring a zevach. It will remind them of the purpose of that altar. Ki edu, and what is that purpose? That it should be bear witness, beinenu v'nechem, between us and between you, that we are one people. In other words, our purpose was to remind us of our unity, not to bring separate. We built it in order not to worship on it, not that we built it in order to make it a separate center of worship. Chalila lanu mimenu limrod b'Adonai. Far be it from us to think that we to go and rebel against God, v'lashuv hayom me'achari Adonai, and to turn now away from God, livnos mizbeach, to build an altar le'olah l'mincha l'zavach, for the purpose of bringing sacrifices and offerings. Milvad, so something separate, mizbach Adonai Eloheinu, from the altar of God Asher Lifnei Mishkano, which is in His tabernacle, which is, as we know now, in Shiloh. So Vayishma Pinhas HaKohen, I'm at verse 30. Pinhas, the priest, heard their message, and all of the heads of the community heard, Rashi Alpha Yisrael, and the heads of the armies Asheritu that were with him, Es Hadvarim, the words Asher Dibru b'nei Reuben u'bnei Gad u'bnei Menasseh ve'itav be'eineihem, and they liked the answer. They appreciated the answer. They trusted the answer. Vayomer Pinchas ben Elazar HaKohen, and Pinchas, the son of Elazar, said, El b'nei Reuben ve'el b'nei Gad ve'el b'nei Menasseh, to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the sons of Manasseh, Hayom yadanu ki b'docheinu Adonai. Now we know that God is among us. Now this is fascinating. He says, he didn't say what you'd expect him to say, which is, now we know that we are united in the worship of God. But now we know that God is among us. When people, and I'm going to go off on a side a little bit here, and when we see unity among the people, then we know that God is with us. Unity brings the presence of God into people. When the people are fractious and arguing amongst each other, God is not there. God is not with us. And that's what Pinchas is saying. Now that we've built this unity, now we know that God is among us. Asher lo ma'altem Adonai hama'al hazeh, that you have not been rebelling against God with this. As hitzaltem es b'nei Yisrael mi'Adonai, you have saved the people of Israel from the hand of God. In other words, the punishing hand of God. You have saved us. Because should this split in your return to the other side of the Jordan have led to a rupture in the people, we would have had to suffer the wrath of God. Vayashav Pinchas ben Elazar HaKohen, and Pinchas, the son of Elazar the Kohen, Pianesiim, and the leaders, they returned, Me'ez b'nei Reuven, Me'ez b'nei Gad, Me'eretz Hagilah, they returned from the other side of the Jordan, Eretz Canaan, to the land of Canaan, El b'nei Yisrael, to the people of Israel, Vayeshivu Osam Davar, and they gave them their word. They reported back what had happened. Vayitav hadavar b'nei Yisrael, and the report back that they heard was good in the eyes of the people of Israel. Vayivarchu Elohim b'nei Yisrael, and the people of Israel blessed God. V'lo amru la'alos aleim l'tzava, and they stood down all of their armies, and a civil war was averted. The Shachesar, it's a civil war which would have destroyed the land, Asher b'nei Reuven u'bnei Gad yoshvim ba, in which the people of Reuben and Gad were living. Vayikru b'nei Reuven u'bnei Gad la'mizbeach, and the people of Gad and Reuben called this altar Ki Eid, They called it that it is a witness among us, ki Adonai El Elohim, that the Lord is God. This completes chapter 22 in this very interesting episode. Thank you for studying chapter 22. And we are getting closer to the conclusion of this book. Looking forward to studying chapter 23 and the rest of the book of Joshua together.